Who am I? It's a question we wrestle with from a very young age. Right now, I'm looking at you, and you're looking at me. You might be wondering, who is this person in front of me? And without even realizing it, you might be reaching for a label. Would you label me man? Artist? It's okay if you reach for cutie. But what if I told you this outfit is my answer to a question asked of me before I could even speak? The moment I was born, someone looked at me and said, "It's a boy!" And with that label came an instruction manual. An unwritten but deeply entrenched manual prepared for me before I was even a day old. It told me how to talk, how to stand, what to wear, what toys to enjoy, what emotions are acceptable. It said who I was supposed to be. I received the manual, but I was terrible at following the instructions. My nature, expressive, compassionate, curious, didn't match the manual I'd been given. And for that, I paid a price. I was bullied so relentlessly that I changed schools 7 times in 5 years. I felt like a misfit. I couldn't be who the manual said I should be, and I kept disappointing my friends and my family who expected me to be manly. I was born in Mexico and raised across Chile and Bolivia. In each place, I was given a new version of the same label, boy. The language changed, the accents changed, the customs changed. The expectations did not. The manual traveled with me. When I moved to Chile, I was told to deepen my voice. In the United States, I was taught that manly guys do cut grass and do not sing Whitney Houston. And everywhere I lived, I was told to wear plain clothes, hide my feelings, and suppress my softness. I learned quickly that moving to a new country didn't result in a new manual. It just translates it. And no matter where I lived, my nature left me feeling isolated and weak. So I tried to edit myself. I lowered my voice, I widened my stance, I muted my colors, I stopped singing Whitney Houston. I tried to follow the instructions more carefully. For years, I believed conformity was the price of leadership, and I was ambitious. By age 33, I became a senior public health leader at the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services, a U.S. government agency responsible for healthcare coverage for more than 150 million people. I advised on national health policy issues. I influenced systems that improved access to nursing homes and hospitals. I was very good at my job, but while I was helping design policies to improve the health of millions, I was quietly compromising my own happiness and well-being. I didn't want my colleagues to know I was unhappy, and I was terrified of the potential professional consequences of showing that part of myself. So I overcompensated by becoming a workaholic and by wearing dark, plain suits. But at night and on weekends, I began experimenting with vibrant colors and bold prints I thrifted, clothes that moved, clothes with texture and personality. But I struggled to find them in the men's section. The silhouettes were rigid, the colors restrained, the options narrow. So quietly, I began walking into another section of the store, the section labeled women. Not because I wanted to become a woman, but because the options seemed endless. The fabric, the flow, the possibility. The first time I did it, my heart was pounding. It felt rebellious and exposed and strangely liberating. It was terrifying and it was exhilarating. It wasn't a public declaration, it was something more private, a quiet discovery. This is what I love. Long before I had the language to describe who I was already moving towards myself. Then, in 2020, the shift to virtual work during the COVID-19 pandemic presented an unexpected opportunity. For the first time, my home became my office. Remote work emboldened me to make a quiet decision. I started showing up to virtual meetings while wearing the clothes that make me happy, similar to what I'm wearing today. Bright colors, big hats, vibrant jewelry, not as a costume, nor as a performance, but as an expression of who I am. People noticed. They asked questions. I shared, I'm a non-binary person. I don't identify as a woman or a man. They should wear what makes them happy, and I should do the same. Some colleagues accepted me, others did not. That visibility and the backlash that sometimes followed gave me a new perspective. For years, I'd been navigating the system from the inside. I understood how government programs are funded, how policy decisions are made, how health inequities are measured, and too often ignored. I knew that queer and transgender people were disproportionately experiencing homelessness, violence, and gaps in care. I'd spent my career improving the existing system, but now I was inspired to build a new one. So I made another decision. I stepped out of federal service and I co-founded House of Transcendent and now serve as its CEO. We created it to prevent homelessness among queer and trans adults. Our mission is to build an accessible, vibrant, and healthy community for all. And alongside that work, I continued creating fashion art, not just as self-expression, but as advocacy. Then, at the end of last year, I was named the 2025 Style Icon by the Elton John AIDS Foundation. Ironically, the very thing that made me feel I was failing at the boy manual is what gave me the power to rewrite it and to serve my community. And yet, rewriting the manual for yourself doesn't mean everyone else has stopped believing in the old one or trying to enforce it. In 2023, I was riding a train in Cleveland, Ohio. It was an ordinary afternoon. Fluorescent lights, the hum of the track beneath us, the smell of metal and upholstered bench seats. I was wearing a colorful tunic, loose, flowing, unapologetically bright. My best friend, a Two-Spirit indigenous person, had just painted her nails a vivid red hours earlier. We were laughing. Then 5 guys sat behind us. At first, it was muttering, then snickering. The laughter got sharper. Then one of them leaned forward and said loud enough for everyone in the carriage to hear, "Shut up, faggot." The words were ugly, slurs, the kind designed to strip a person of their humanity. You can feel a moment like that in your body. Your shoulders tighten, your breath shortens, you calculate exits. We stood up at the next stop, we stepped onto the platform, and they followed. I could hear their boots behind us, heavy, fast. And before I could fully turn around, one of them charged forward and punched me in the back of my head. The sound was dull. The shock was louder. We ran. We were lucky, but the message was unmistakable. When you refuse to follow the manual, some people believe you deserve correction or even punishment. And in that moment, I knew something difficult. If I had dressed the way the manual had prescribed, dark, plain, compliant, if I had pretended to be somebody else, that attack may have never happened. Violence against people who do not conform to gender expectations is not rare. It disproportionately harms Black trans women. It harms Two-Spirit indigenous people. It harms queer immigrants. It harms people already navigating multiple systems of exclusion. Recently, an unhoused non-binary immigrant named Benji was murdered on that same train line. Benji loved colorful clothes. Benji loved photography. Benji loved helping people. This is not an isolated incident. It is not about 5 angry guys on a train. It is a pattern, and it is a global crisis. If it is a global crisis, then we have to ask a global question. Is the manual universal, or is it cultural? In 2018, I became an Atlantic Fellow, which gave me the opportunity to travel abroad and learn from leaders around the world. And wherever I went, I made it a priority to connect with indigenous communities. What I learned surprised me. The idea that there are only 2 labels, only 2 manuals, is not inevitable. It is not universal. Many indigenous communities around the world have long recognized 3 or more distinct roles. In Native American communities, there are Two-Spirit people. In Samoa, Fa'afafine. In South Asia, Hijra. In parts of Uganda, the Madokodako. In Zapotec communities of Mexico, there are Muxes. And in Australia, there are sister girls and brother boys. These diverse gender identities are not modern trends. They're long-standing cultural truths. And here's what struck me most. In many of these communities, gender diversity was not treated as deviance. It was treated as difference, or even sacred. The violence we see today is not proof that gender diversity is unnatural. It is proof that certain manuals became dominant. Colonization did not just extract land, it exported rigid gender roles. Religious fundamentalism hardened them. Policy codified it into law. And over time, what was once one cultural interpretation became an imposed universal truth. But gender is far more expansive than the manuals we were given. By we, I mean those of us who grew up learning about the world through a Western lens. There are more than 2 manuals. The problem is not masculinity. The problem is a belief that masculinity or femininity must look a certain way. The problem is not labels. The problem is pretending there are only 2. And here's the part we don't talk about enough. Most performance doesn't look like a punch. It looks like performance. And we do. We perform the manual for our parents, for our neighbors, for our supervisors, and sometimes even for strangers. And we police each other's performance too. Think for a moment. Have you ever felt that flicker of discomfort that made you think, he shouldn't wear that dress, or she shouldn't have hairy legs? I know I have. I remember the first time seeing 2 men holding hands and feeling something tighten in my chest. I remember seeing a man in a dress and feeling a knot in my stomach. I even remember watching Elton John and feeling both fascination and judgment about what he wore. My parents, Pentecostal missionaries, taught me to behave like a real man. And for a long time, I believed them, and I tried to enforce that manual on myself and on other men. It wasn't cruelty, it was conditioning. Then years later, in Ethiopia, I saw 2 men walking hand in hand. In the world I was raised in, that gesture meant lust, defiance, abomination. But my taxi driver smiled and said, in Ethiopia, this means they are best friends. And in that moment, I realized the manual I'd been given was not universal. It was cultural, contextual, limited. We don't police each other because we are evil. We do it because we were each handed a manual. We were taught that sameness equals stability, that conformity equals order, that if everyone follows the manual, the world feels less chaotic. But what looks like order is often censorship. It is conformity imposed on people who are asked to shrink themselves to fit a script that was never written for them. It is an unspoken agreement that says, as long as you follow the manual, you're safe. But if you don't, you're on your own. This may seem fine on the surface, but there's a menacing undertone. Dare to step outside of the manual, and you surrender your right to safety. It suggests conformity is a fair price for protection, and how you show up in the world can and should be reviewed, evaluated, and judged. But here's the truth. You are not broken if the manual doesn't fit you. Not everyone can buy off the rack. Some of us will need alterations, or even an entirely new design. And that is not failure. That is authorship. Or in the language of fashion and creativity, upcycling. Upcycling isn't just about reuse. It is taking something that already exists and transforming it into something of greater value. We do this with clothes all the time. We take fabric, color, texture, and we remake it into something uniquely ours. We can do this with the ingredients of who we are, with the labels we were handed, with the assumptions we absorbed, with the expectations stitched into us before we ever had a say. This dress is not defiance, it is design. It fits my version of masculinity, my story, my stance, my scars. It is an expansion of masculinity. And this is not just about gender. Maybe the labels you inherited say, people like you don't lead. You are too small for your big dreams. Stay quiet, stay agreeable, stay in your lane. Or maybe it says, Protect yourself from people who are different. What if you reimagine that label by upcycling it? What if you remained practical, but added openness and sensitivity? Kept your tradition, but added cultural humility? Kept pride in who you are, but expanded your definition of who belongs? If the manual you were given fits you perfectly, beautiful, keep it, but make room for those whose pages look different. And if the manual you were given has never quite fit, if you've been lowering your voice, muting your colors, avoiding the men or women section, you are allowed to be real with yourself. You are allowed to reimagine. You're allowed to revise your manual. Because the question asked of me before I could even speak was, who are you supposed to be? And for a long time, I tried to answer correctly. But now, I answer honestly. I am me. Colorful, strong, kind. That's my answer. And perhaps the better question isn't, who are you supposed to be? It's this: who gets to decide?